Okay, so first question. Before Ambivalence Avenue, your last release, um, you were on Mush Records where you released I think 3 albums. That's it.
3 albums, yeah.
Yes. Actually, how did you get into Warp Records?
Because partly because I became good friends with Chris Clark, and he was just he was really supportive. He helped me. He basically just kept on playing my tracks to Steve Beckett, the owner of Warp. Yeah, and then I think when I wrote the track Ambivalence Avenue, the first track off the album, Steve Beckett shown a lot of interest, and then I just kept on sending him more tracks until eventually he gave in and signed me.
Was it a dream for you to come into Warp?
It was a dream come true, yeah. Yeah, totally, yeah. It was like I've been a Warp obsessive since, I don't know, maybe 1998, earlier maybe. Over 10 years I've been a Warp fan, so it's always been my favourite label.
Yeah.
So I'm really, it's almost like I haven't really. I almost feel like I'm still in a dream. You know, I'm really happy about it.
Clark played tonight.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that he said that now he adds some guitars in his music.
Yeah.
Thanks to you. So what kind of relationship do you have with Clark? Do you influence each other?
I'd say so. Yeah, definitely. We're very kind of. We send each other a lot of music, like unreleased, unfinished music, for 3 or 4 years now. And Chris originally contacted me because he started playing guitar and he was interested in my music, and I discovered Chris Clark in 2001 with his debut album. When I was at university, so it was kind of strange to suddenly become friends with someone that I was a fan of for such a long time. But even though Chris's music is generally electronic, he's got really broad taste. He's interested in lots of different styles of music. He's interested in rock music and ambient music and electronic music, and he's like me. He's got lots of different tastes. Even though his music is predominantly electronic, he's still interested in acoustic music as well. And I think we've collaborated unofficially in the past, and he's influenced me. He's supported me with my electronic music, and I've supported him with his guitar, and so yeah, I think we've affected each other in the last few years quite a bit. Yeah.
Except Chris Clark, do you know well the other Warp artists? Do you feel close to the global Warp sound?
I don't really know anyone very like Chris. Me and Chris are like close friends. I know a few of the artists on Warp, but not as intimately as I know Chris. Like I've had communication with Marcus from Boards of Canada for 4-5 years, and recently I went on tour with Plaid, Ed and Andy from Plaid in South America, and that was really nice. They're really cool guys, and also I've always been a huge fan of Plaid, so it's really nice because I only joined Warp in 2009. But I've been listening to Warp since 1996. So even though I'm 30 years old, I'm kind of like the new kid on Warp, and I'm meeting like these people who have like been big influences on me. It's really nice. But so far I've only really met like Chris, obviously, and Plaid, and I still haven't met Boards of Canada in the flesh. We've just communicated via email. But yeah, I've been a follower of Warp for a long time. I'm really influenced by Warp.
what surprised me, in fact, in your last album, is that we can hear some kind of folk stuff, electronic folk stuff, followed by abstract hip hop.
Yeah.
Actually, how could you define your sound?
I can't. I don't know. Honestly, I've got lots of interests, and I think that now in my career that I don't want to decide any longer what my sound is about. I think that because I've got so many interests, I've never really, apart from when I was a teenager, I've never really been one to be obsessed with a genre. I'm more interested in like random artists. So like I've never been like obsessed about a particular genre. And I think that it shows in my music because I've got lots of different interests, like really randomly different interests, like Brazilian music, or from the 60s, or the Beach Boys, or dubstep, or hip hop, J Dilla, Aphex Twin. There's so many different things. And Steve Reich, New York composer. It all kind of like comes together in my music. So I haven't really decided. I think with my earlier works with Mush Records, I had more of a definite identity. But after doing 3 albums with Mush, I decided that I didn't want to decide on a identity. I wanted to just make music and release music that I like and that feels personal, regardless of what genre people might label it with. So.
How do you feel the evolution between the first and the last album?
I don't really consciously think about it too much. I mean, it all feels like me. It all feels like my personality. But I'm 30 years old. When I made Fi, some of the tracks on Fi were written when I was 21. So it's quite a history between that age and where I am now. And I've changed as a person. I've got older. I've changed my opinions about things and stuff. But I always feel that everything that I've done reflects who I am inside. So. I think there's an obvious jump between Mush and Warp. I think there's an obvious differentiation between my Mush records and Warp, but it purely just reflects me as a person. It's nothing to do with industry or the label or anything. It's just a personal thing,
On the cover artwork, we can see you recording some trees or something, nature.
Yeah.
Actually, what kind of samples can we find on your album?
Depends on which album. Often.
Let's talk about the last one.
Ambivalence Avenue. There's recordings of ice, like frozen water. Like the last track on the album, Dorkan, is like a invented word which is like half Welsh, half English. Dor is the Welsh name for water, and can is just the English word for can, obviously, and basically it means watering can. I don't know what the French word is. That track, Dorkan, it was a really nice summer's day, and I didn't want to be inside my studio. So I decided to take my MPC sampler out into the garden and use like things around me to make the beats. So I used like stones, bottles, and a watering can as part of the sounds to make the percussion with, which is why I called it Dorkan. The reason why I used the Welsh name for water is because Wales is like one of my favourite places on earth. Yeah.
Do you put it purely on your music? Can we hear it, or do you put some effects?
Not. Yeah, I think there's processing of some sort. I wouldn't necessarily say effects. I use different ways to to process sound. I use a lot of old equipment like reel-to-reel, analog tape, but also modern stuff like samplers, things like that. But I like recording sounds. I like location recording. I've got the picture of me in the album with a reel-to-reel recorder. That's my favourite object.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you use a lot of vintage material. We can hear a kind of grain.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the correct word in English. Which makes the songs really atmospheric, combined with your voice and so on. Are you kind of nostalgic people?
Yeah, I like to kind of bring in elements of the past into my music, but also the idea that it's not retro. It's not supposed to sound 70s. It's supposed to sound modern, but with a retro element, but I think I just generally like analog sounds, like old vintage equipment. I like the grain and the distortion and the warmth and things like that. So I love tape and valves and old equipment like that. Question
maybe, is there a particular meaning on the title Ambivalence Avenue?
Yeah, but it's very difficult to explain. It's quite strange. Ambivalence, the feeling that you don't really know which emotion you're feeling. Is somewhere between two emotions. I remember experiencing this when one of the first times I visited London, because I live near Birmingham, and I visited London before I lived there, and I had like this really weird kind of daydream, like a very strange kind of atmosphere, and I felt very ambivalent. I didn't understand which emotion to feel. I couldn't really describe which emotion I felt. And over the years, I became interested in this feeling of ambivalence, this feeling that you're not sure whether you're happy or sad, or it's a very confusing kind of emotion. And it was like the artwork of the album represents that experience, but the experience is not. It can be specific, but it can also be broad as well. It can represent like the general feeling of ambivalence, the kind of strange, vague feeling of emotion when you're not really sure how you feel, So yeah, it's hard to explain.
Difficult. I will listen to it again.
Yeah.
My favorite song of Bibio is Kiosk, When She Laughs. So what's the meaning of this track? You talked about waterfalls, rocking chair.
Yeah.
What's the meaning of that?
The name Kiosk, the reason why I gave it this name is because I was quite influenced by Zen Buddhism and Japanese.
Small poem.
Yeah, the haiku, and they're not, because the syllable count for a haiku is 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables, and I got it wrong and thought it was 3, 7, and 5. Okay, so I realised afterwards that it wasn't a true haiku, so I decided to call it Kiosk,
Yes.
like something similar to a haiku. And all it really was that I had like a little book, like a notebook, and if I was travelling, I would think of an idea and I'd write a little haiku, and I made a collection of haiku poems. So one day I just decided that I was going to make a song out of these haikus. So they're some of them they're just conceptual ideas. Some of them are based on real events. Like the first haiku, when she laughs, the piano in the hall plays a quiet note, is a reference to my girlfriend, because my girlfriend's got a very loud laugh, and sometimes when someone sneezes or laughs or coughs, sometimes if there's an instrument in the corner, you hear like a ding, you hear a note, and it was a kind of reference to my girlfriend who's got this loud laugh, and sometimes she laughs and you can hear like an instrument like my guitar or a piano, you hear like in the corner, because that particular sound like is exactly the same frequency as the string, and I think it's a beautiful, you know,
rocking chair.
I don't know, it just came out of my head. I don't know really.
I like it. So last question, let's talk about the forthcoming album, the next release with some remixes and unreleased track. Could you tell me more about that?
Well, there's 4 unreleased tracks from me, and then 8 remixes. The last one is a remix made by me of my own work. So some of those tracks on this forthcoming release are tracks which some of them are actually like 2 years old, but I just wanted to release them. I wanted an opportunity to release them, and I decided that it would be nice to do an EP, but to invite some artists to do remixes. But artists who I respect and wanted to, I mean, for instance, my Leatherette, who did a remix of Lovers Carvings. They're friends of mine from my hometown, Wolverhampton, and they haven't actually released an album yet, but I wanted them to do a remix anyway. So it was like an opportunity to kind of give some of the people an opportunity to release on Warp as well, who I respect.
Like Clark made with Ted, and your remix maybe?
Yeah, I mean, Clark was always like guaranteed. I would ask Clark, because we're good friends. 2, I did the remix for Ted, so it seemed like a good idea. But also, obviously, because I think he's I think he's a genius. So yeah.
Switch who's gonna all those